Well, good morning and welcome to Buddha's in Your Landfill, or as I'm calling it now, your moment of Zen, or your Zen moment. Remembering that Zen Buddhism, and Zen, Buddhism for short, is fundamentally an awakening or a satori. It all points to all of the teachings, all of the practice is kind of like the pirate's plank that forces you, sometimes resisting, but always moving towards the end of the plank where you step off and have a satori or a grasp of the totality of your situation. So this is not necessarily the big one, where you're enlightened, but just solving a problem, or how to open a box. You see, it starts with little things. That's where I live. How do I get out of this little fix, like MacGyver? So the Zen moment basically is seeing how to use what you've got in a totality, rather than looking for a savior or somebody to come in and fix it, or giving up and go buying a new one. So let's pick up where we left off, and we're going to be investigating and looking into my favorite topic, which is the call to adventure as outlined and mapped out by Joseph Campbell in his classic book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. I really encourage you to read Campbell's book. It is a blueprint for Star Wars, for the movies today, where you have a call to adventure, and there is a hero, and he goes through tests and adventures, and he comes out and he back to society with wisdom. So this is basically the classic myth of the soul's evolution of consciousness. So it's not so much, it's a psychological journey, but it's portrayed in physical journeys, in our everyday life, or in our movies. Primarily in our movies. All the movies are about the call to adventure, whether it's a love story or whatever. So this metaphorical blueprint is very important to really understand, not only, and it helps me in understanding movies and getting a Zen moment out of a movie. Last night we talked about, at Martini Time, we talked about Vertigo, which is a classic Hitchcock movie. Well, it took me about a day to get a Zen moment out of that, but finally it just kind of snapped. A Zen moment is a snap. So the parts come together, the dots connect. See, when there are loose ends out there, when there are little things that happen in our life, fragments that don't fit, that's like a grain of sand in an oyster. And something's missing, something doesn't fit. Why doesn't, everything is supposed to fit, why doesn't this fit? And we struggle and struggle, and then there's a Zen moment, snap, and there's an expansion of understanding that now includes the dots or the loose threads that didn't fit before. So you see the whole quilt instead of just the piece of quilt that you think is the whole quilt, but what are these threads? Where do these threads go? So the call to adventure is noticing the loose threads that don't seem to fit your world, and you become curious about them, and you follow them, like E.T. following the M&Ms, like the detective following the clues, you see. So this curiosity and this trust that there is a whole picture, and I need to see it, or I will never be at rest or whole, you see. So my consciousness won't be whole. My consciousness won't be complete. I won't be complete unless I follow these loose threads, unless I connect the dots that resist being connected. You see this sense there? And we all really are involved in this. It's just we don't have a big map. We don't have a picture. So let's take a look at where we left off yesterday. We're using Avatar, since I hope everybody saw that. And if you didn't, please go back and look at it again. So we left off yesterday with the Jake Sully as the example of the hero, the call to adventure, and the world that the movie maps out is a divided world between sky people, who are metaphors for us with our machines and our search for the unobtainium, and the paradise of Pandora, and the tribal people who live there, who have body wisdom, and the sky people have system wisdom. In other words, they can make machines, but they have no body wisdom. The Navi can't make machines, but they have body wisdom. I have a sneeze coming. Excuse me. Okay, so let's pick up there. And I want to show you something. When I watched Avatar, when it first came out, I think I watched it 3 times. And I even made this chart connecting the hero Jake Sully up with Joseph Campbell's call to adventure diagram. Isn't that? and I took quote. I listened to the movie and wrote down the quotes so that the quotes fit the different stages of the call to adventure. This was what Jake Sully said at the beginning. He said, "There was a big hole in my life. I dreamed of flying, but you always have to wake up. A dumb grunt going someplace he's going to regret. Pandora. Never figured I'd be going there. A fresh start on a new world. Pay is good. One life ends, another begins." And there you have the call to adventure. So let's take a look at this call to adventure. We'll probably work with this for a number of days until we seem to get through it a little bit. So the call to adventure, basically, this is an outline from his book. It is a circle going in this direction. So the hero hears the call to adventure, like Jake Sully, and the hero either usually in the stories there is it's an accidental beginning of the hero stumbles onto something. Well, like with Jake Sully, his brother was the one who chose to go on the adventure to Pandora, but he died. So Jake Sully, who had the same DNA, was picked, you see. So it was an accidental call. He stumbled into it. But on the other hand, do we really stumble, you see? Is it all not part of our soul's journey, even the accidents? So the call to adventure, according to Joseph Campbell, the first stage of the hero's journey is the call to adventure, where the hero can go forth of his own volition, be carried or sent abroad by some benign or malignant agent, or begin as a mere blunder or chance, as it did. So there are 3 ways that the adventure starts. You willingly go on this adventure, like the knight's quest for the Holy Grail in the Arthurian romances, or you're carried on the adventure by some god or some devil, or you just trip. You stumble into it like Alice in Wonderland. Then you fall into a rabbit hole, you see. But so we're looking at the movies then as stories, external stories of the adventure. But in order for the adventure to activate in us, for the understanding to activate in us, we have to look at it psychologically. So it's me, but not psychologically so much like a psychiatrist would look at me, because then, from the psychiatrist's view, you'd be nuts to go on this adventure, or you'd be abnormal. So many people who, when you go on this adventure, you're going to be tagged as being abnormal by the objective sky people, you see, because you're not fitting the normal category of being content with this world. So anyway, we're looking at two views here. The movie is a metaphor that points to your psychological, your subjective view of yourself. I'm on an adventure, you see. So you then, that's what I mean by metaphor, is that when you look at Avatar's metaphor, you say, well, it's a movie about Jake Sully and it's a fantasy. Okay, so that's the objective view. But then that's not the metaphor. The metaphor is where you have two contradictory views held as one. One view is it's about this imaginary trip, it's entertainment, it's a myth, or it's a documentary, whatever, but it's external. I'm a viewer. So then, but that's not a metaphor. The metaphor combines the opposites. The opposite view is that I'm Jake Sully, and I'm doing this journey with Jake Sully as Jake Sully. So the metaphor is that I'm not Jake Sully and I am Jake Sully. You see, it holds these two together. But from the sky people's, from the objective view of the world, I'm not Jake Sully. Jake Sully's a character in a movie. Or a historical figure, you see. I'm not that, I'm this, I'm separate, you see. The metaphor combines the opposites and generates the energy necessary to break through the womb of our very limited and narrow world. In other words, it takes energy to break through the threshold or the membrane of the ego world. So where does that energy come from? It comes from combining opposites, just like in a magnet, or polarities. If you combine positive and negative in a polarity, you get and you can use that energy. It runs lights, runs a machine, you see. So the system that holds the opposites together is a self-generating system, you see. You see. So, okay, let's get back to this. So we're looking at this circle here. It's kind of busy, I hope you can see it. But the hero hears the call to adventure, and he goes through a threshold. So this is the conscious level here. This level here is the world that we live in, and look around and say, I'm me and you're you, and I'm doing this and you're doing that. And we're all a bunch of things running around here in this conscious world. I'm conscious of it. So it's the known world. It's known. And it's also governed by memory. Everything up here, I already know. This is the world Adam named. Getting back to the garden and Adam, you know. So we're Adam, and we've named it all. It's all defined, and it's all known. And I'm known, and I'm placed in it as a defined person, and I define you, and you define me, and we're all in this system, this known world. But the hero, something doesn't fit, you see. Something is missing. Something is not complete. Something I'm not satisfied. So the hero then sees these loose threads and follows them, clues. And he goes alone. You can't go through the threshold in a group. You can't go in a church. You can't go on an arc. You see, you can't go in an ideology. You can't go in a political party. You have to go alone. That's the hero's journey. And just a footnote, this hero's journey of the soul is not gender-based. It's not only men do it. I mean, the soul is not a gender. So everyone is a hero, and just we don't have a language that puts them together, you see. So what happens when you go through the threshold? Campbell writes, we can see this in our stories, in our myths, in our religions, is that there are battles. Well, first of all, the hero gets a helper, maybe a book, maybe a friend, maybe guidance. There is going to be some help for the hero, a weapon, Maybe you have an insight, you have an idea, a particular talent, something. There's a helper there, and you go through the threshold, you fall through, you go on the trip, you fall through the rabbit hole, and there's battles with, now here we can go into the mythology, there's battles with a dragon, there may be dismemberment, there may be a crucifixion, there may be an abduction, there may be a night sea journey, a wonder journey, or like a whale's belly. Who is the Pinocchio goes into the whale's belly. Jonah swallowed by a whale. All of these are part of this entering into the threshold where there's going to be tests. The hero has to be tested. Not by, this is where the psychology shifts. It's not in the stories, it's going to be tested by external tests. But what the hero is really battling with is the forces of his own unconscious. So this is all one consciousness. There is the surface, it's like the ocean. Remember when I talked about the submarines? There is the surface ship up here in the conscious world, and there is the whole ocean below. And there are great forces in our psyche. There are untamed, uncontrollable, and we call them demons and whatnot, like addictions and all of these things that we can't control come up from the psyche. So there's a view of it's all one mind, it's all psyche, you see. So what I'm battling with is really manifestations of my own unconscious, my own psyche. This is the depth psychology of Jung. And Joseph Campbell used Carl Jung's studies quite a bit. So anyway, the journey, the call to adventure is shown to us in two ways: externally as a story, or when I'm aware that I'm on the adventure, I'm really battling with my own inconsistencies. When I started practicing yoga back in 1970, I heard the call. I consciously chose to go on the call of adventure by going to this yoga teacher and saying, I want to be your student. Okay, so this was my helper I needed. And I couldn't, before I go into that, let me just go back here. So then I'll pick that up. So pardon me, I'm on the fly here. So what happens during the journey through the unconscious is that there are tests, there are helpers, and what occurs can be written at or described as a sacred marriage, father atonement, that was big with me, apotheosis, or the elixir theft. Prometheus is a good myth for the theft of the elixir. Prometheus stole the elixir to bring it back to man, you see. So the father atonement, or apotheosis, you could say, would be a description of the Buddha's journey, because Buddha went on this, Gautama Buddha went on this journey and came out with an apotheosis of not becoming a god, but becoming realized or awakened. So anyway, he goes through, there's a flight back then, there's the return, which can be coming back to the world that you left, but with wisdom, with something to give, a boon, something now you have earned on your journey that you can give to other people as a service through compassion. So there's the return, and it's pictured in the story, a resurrection, or the rescue, or there's a threshold struggle to get back, and then the elixir, or the wholeness. The Mad Men was a great hero adventure, where Don Draper went on this adventure. Remember when in Mad Men that the call to adventure happened in Korea, when he was just a dog-faced and a little soldier, and his lieutenant was killed and he switched identities, and that started his whole adventure. And so the whole series was him coming back to, was going through the tests with his own unconscious, you see, and coming to a apotheosis or atonement at the end where he achieves individuation. He has created himself, instead of as a fragmented person, as a whole person. So this basic theme, and here again, The Hero with 1,000 Faces is the book I'm really recommending. And so this basic blueprint we can see in religion and in movies and in our own life, because all of us are on this, or somewhere on this wheel, you see. But, so, okay, where are we now? Okay, so we can pick this up tomorrow, and we'll look a little more at avatars, some of these stages in the movie itself, and we'll dig a. And I encourage you, to comment on this. If you have any questions or anything anything that snaps about your life and your adventure, it's a good place to talk about it on this thread. And you all are welcome to message me anytime if you want to just talk about something that's that you don't wish to put on the public forum. And because we're all really looking for a Zen moment where we can get the bigger picture of our life and our journey that we're all on here, and to and every time we have a Zen moment, a snap, a seeing, we advance our consciousness. This is all about the evolution of consciousness, but we have to evolve our consciousness. Nobody can do it for us. So this is the call to a journal. The hero's journey is who is willing to be responsible for the evolution of his consciousness and become a whole consciousness rather than a divided consciousness. And we'll get more into that tomorrow. So I'll see you at Martini time this evening.